Hey guys, Coach here. Thanks for joining me from a very blustery and very smoky Broken Pond. Thank you very much, Canada. Yeah, I got some fires over there in Ontario and Quebec, and we're suffering the wrath. Hopefully it'll clear out. It was very nice this morning, and now it's getting smoky. Hey, today we are talking about when do you have too much yard and how it tends to spoil many things. Maybe you're a young first-time home buyer, or maybe a move-up home buyer. Maybe you're a senior citizen or soon to be, and you're in a phase of life of downsizing. Maybe you stumble across your dream home and it has a massive front yard and backyard, and the current owners have maintained it, maybe not to the best, but it's presentable. But then the words like this tend to come out. Man, honey, this place has so much potential. Look at all the space we could have. Or on the opposite side, you're a downsizer and it says, hey, it's only a half acre. It's a half acre and it'll be so easy to whip this thing back into shape. It just needs a little TLC. It's got good bones, and can you believe the price? We can make this happen. And then it happens. What we're talking about here today, too much yard. I'm glad you're here. Let's get going. Hey guys, Coach here. Don't forget the consultation services that we have at youryardcoach.com. Hey, welcome back and thanks for joining in today. I appreciate all the listeners out there. So, question, how can a newbie home buyer or a senior or someone in between know when the yard is too big and requires more time, effort, and dollars than you have or want to put into it? I have seen this scenario play out more times than you can count. I shared a story a while back about a couple near where I used to live. Nice folks, somewhat well off, and they were eager to get out of the city and jump into the rural lifestyle. So, they bought 5 acres with a fairly new and pretty nice home, but it was just crap for a yard. It was just, field basically. And the same words echoed from them when I met them. We imagine how much potential this place has. We want to have fruit trees and horses and chickens, the life we always wanted, the rural country lifestyle, the homesteading type of lifestyle. I met them at our local annual, you've all been to them, I'm sure, or know of them, the annual garden home shows that generally pop up around in mid to late winter. So conversations were struck, appointments were made and kept, designs were done, contracts were signed, and the work was done. Long story short, new front yard, new backyard. Not cheap. It was in the high 5 figures to get this job done. 2 years later, and many jobs later, I referred another potential client to go drive by this house and see a larger landscape work that I had done. Yeah, that didn't go very well. And I was dismissed with one phone call, which had never happened to me before. So in follow-up and checking why, I drove by that house again. What the holy crap happened? In just over 2 years, the place was an absolute mess. Ruined, literally. It was nothing of what I drove out of that driveway the last time, or what I had seen about 4 months afterwards on a follow-up drive-by. Long story short, too much yard and too much work, too much stress, and an eventual separation of ways as a result. It was kind of like a fantasy that was ruined by reality. Reality of what it takes to keep up and correctly maintain that much property, I think really smacked them right square in the face. It really did. Now, in all fairness and all reality, do I think there were other issues at play that probably crept in? Yes, sure. But to see that thing, all the hundreds of hours that I put into it, and to see it in that condition just floored me. So, the best way I tell folks when too much yard may lead to ruining the dream is to look in the mirror. If you are honest with yourself or yourselves, you know deep down what type of homeowner you are or want to be. Now, that may involve a landscape of any size, and it may not. Ask yourself this question: do I actually look forward to the weekend so I can get out in the landscape that I've worked so hard to attain and keep it beautiful and the best it can be for me and my family? If the answer is maybe, or hard pass, no, then smaller, more manageable yards during your house shopping days should be a top priority. Or at the very least, a larger landscape that consists of a majority of hardscape, bigger patios, shops and sheds, bigger house, smaller lot type of situation, and not living greenscape that is going to require maintenance and upkeep and, modernization, cleanups, etc. This past week, I received an email from a viewer down in Southern California. And this person is a first-time home buyer, which to me in Southern California is quite a feat these days, considering prices. The pic they sent me was one of those, I think it was titled, "Where Do I Start?" pictures, and a narrative that reflected the same. It basically said, what do I do now and where do I start? They have quite a bit of work just based on the small, limited view that I had of this backyard. I mean, it obviously had not been taken care of. It had bramble, blackberry bushes up against the fences, I should say the cinder block wall, dilapidated sheds, dog dig yards, no lawn to speak of, at least in the shot that I saw. So yeah, for a first-time home buyer, maybe coming from a small rental or from an apartment life, and you walk into that and it's like, oh my, and then happens. Now it's like, oh heck, what do I do now? So can we grow into homeowners that enjoy taking care of their yard, their investment that they've worked so hard for to get into and now have to take care of? Sure, yeah, you should. No one expects to be, an expert coming in on your first home. But there's a fine line that you have to have reality creep into your forefront of your brain when you're buying and when you're acquiring this huge investment, sometimes the largest investment some people ever make. And if you go into it with, wow, look at all this space, imagine what we can do, and then find out exactly how much work is actually involved. This poor person down in Southern California, they have, I don't know, depending on their skill set and what kind of resources they have and what kind of family and friends that could have come help them. They've got a good, I would say, 2 to 3 weekends worth of work and honest 8 hours a day type of effort to take that thing down to a blank canvas and redo it. So when you see something like that, and I admit that when I was in my 20s, way back when, and I fell for my first house in Hayward, California, and it was a okay neighborhood, not the best, but an okay neighborhood, and it was on a slope. And I said, I can do all this. I can learn, I can do, I have some skills already in place. But then I didn't have the resources, or a lot of resources at the time, in order to whip everything into what I wanted to do. And being only there less than 2 years, I did fix what I needed to fix and made it very presentable. All DIY, no professional help. Hell, I was only 24 years old. I didn't know what I didn't know yet. So, my Southern California example, did they bite off more than they can chew? I don't know. Perhaps, but I think they're throwing that question out there kind of presents a lack of skill set, knowledge, and confidence that a first-time home buyer probably would experience. Now it's time to put on your student cap and start learning, start watching, start asking questions, start acquiring the tools and skill sets needed to take on a project like that and actually get it up to a nice, livable, safe condition that you and yours can go outside and enjoy every day. Here's something that I've also seen is when folks get into these places and there's one spouse or partner that is the driving force behind everything. Does that sound familiar? Oh, I know what we can do. Oh, I know I can. I know this is exactly what we needs. And you get into it and that person goes, okay, I'm going to take this on. And yeah, they have the energy, but they don't have the skills. They don't have the time. They don't have the dollars. And it tends to get half done. Yeah, we meant to get the rest of this cleaned up, but we ran out of X, Y, and Z. How many times have I heard that over the years? And then there's the old adage, well, we got half of it done. We'll hire somebody else to come in and do the rest. And so you make phone calls and you get estimates and holy cow, wow, you see the dollars that are being requested in order to come in and rescue you. So that kind of goes by the wayside. And if you can see the writing on the wall, this is where the downward spiral kind of starts. It's where you run into that wall, run into that door that's locked, and you don't know how to get past it. And this is what I'm talking about, too much yard. When Maestro and I acquired this 2.5 acres, which is, yeah, in some people's minds, that's a dinky. But when you're a senior citizen and you have limited resources, we're not broke, but we're certainly not rich. And looking at it, I saw the potential. I saw what it could do, what it could be. But that's coming from a position of 40 years of my life in one capacity or another, gaining the skill set and experience of what could be, and yet still having enough gas in my tank to actually pull it off. And we didn't do anything when we first got here. I mean, it was October. October at Brook and Pond is the shoulder season of where we're just about ready to go cold. There was just enough time to get out here with a string trimmer and a chainsaw and start trying to whip things back into shape a little bit. We had bonfires here that I probably should have been a little more careful with, but everything turned out okay. Hoses were at the ready, but man, there was some kind of a microburst here at one point, and a lot of timber was down, and it looked like those games when you were a kid of pickup sticks. And so the chainsaw just came out. So in my case, we got through that fall and that winter, and then we started doing things the following spring, moving things and designing things and creating things and dreaming things, all within the means, though, knowing full well that we weren't going to turn 2.5 acres of beautiful forest into some residential yard. There was going to be a blend. Nature is down at the bottom of the lawn, nature is on the other side of the pond, and that's how it's going to stay. Now, what we have developed here is about 3/4 of an acre, ornamental, driveways, beds, you've seen it. You've seen it on the channel. So for me, I know that at 68 years old, I'm not going bigger. I'm not going to be knocking any more trees down. I'm not going to be trying to ornamentally develop the rest of Brook and Pond. It's going to stay the way it is. And you know something? I'm at peace with that. And that right there is the biggest hurdle you can get over. Knowing full well that what you have, now you can just take care of it. You can develop things or plant some more things if you want, but you're not going to expand. You're not going to go any further. And when you are a first timer or a senior like myself, or maybe you're someone who's come across a sudden disability, or you're a divorced parent now and you have 3 kids that depend on you and you're holding down, 40, 50, 60 hours a week of work to make sure that the bills are paid and the roof stays over your head. And sometimes, even though we're still in the same house that at one time we fell in love with, you look out the window now and you just feel like you're out of gas. There's nothing left in your tank. You can't afford to bring somebody in to do the work because you're trying to still make the mortgage and put food on the table and pay the bills and the taxes and utilities and everything else. Guarantee you, the landscape is generally the first to suffer because our priorities are our priorities. And when we make those priorities to take care of our own and make sure that everybody is healthy, clothed, fed, educated, etc., the landscape is often the first to suffer. Now, in those circumstances, I hold nothing against anybody. And if I can help anybody in that situation, I'm only an email away. However, there are a lot of folks out there that are mentally and physically sound, gainfully employed, don't work 60+ hours a week, have at least 2 able-bodied adults and sometimes more in the house, and yet the place is just let gone to hell. And generally there's a tipping point. And what I have found in my professional experience in designing and consulting with folks, that there is an event somewhere that occurred that was the whole causation for this downward spiral. And it will not stop just at the landscape. If you let the yard and the landscape start to slide, it's an indication that there's other things going on. What you fell in love with and what you write a check for every single month is now the bane of your existence for one reason or another. You look out through that window on Saturday and you just shake your head no and go, maybe next week, maybe next month. What I've also seen in a couple of professions, and that is when the yard goes, so go other things in the same direction. Have you ever come across someone who has just an absolute crap front yard with car parts and weeds and unmowns and cracked concretes and everything, and you go inside the house and it's pristine? No, I haven't. Maybe you have, but I have not. And I have served the public as a contractor and in many other capacities, and I've never found that. And so as the landscape goes, ergo other things, other parts of the lifestyle as well. Cars aren't working as well as they used to. House needs painting. Sink needs unclogged. Septic tank is over full. There's lots of things that start happening for one reason or another. But here's the thing, and please do not take this as pulpit preaching or anything else. All I'm doing is bringing in the professional experience that I have seen and helped out with, and here's some suggestions. Here's the thing. You and yours made almost all the choices and decisions that have led up to this point. The point where you decided that, screw the yard. I don't care about the yard. And yet there's no viable, actual, bona fide reason why. Just don't feel like it. You know, when you bought the place, you chose to do or not to do things that have led up to this point. You may or may not have little ones in the house watching and learning on how to be a parent, how to be a responsible adult, a homeowner. Habits they will tend to file away for their lives down the road to either mimic, chances are, or not. And like I said before, there are circumstances that arise that we cannot control and force our hand and limit us in what we can do. But I'm not directing this at those folks. I'm speaking to the able-bodied, sound-minded folks that are making conscious choices to ignore that big, look at all the space yard you chose to fall in love with, you chose to go through ESCO with, you chose to move into, and then you found out that it's more than you can chew. You know, in the end, honestly, in the end, the landscape that suffers is yours. The only property value that suffers is not yours. When you let your place go to hell, you affect immediate visual of your neighbors. If the Smiths down the street from you want to put a sign in the yard and move, maybe because of you, maybe not, but when buyers come in, they're going to look around and they're going to see, whoa, what happened over there? Oh, that's the Joneses. Doesn't exactly bode well for property values. So as an adult and as a responsible homeowner, one lesson that I learned decades ago is the one that I carry with me to this day. And this was told to me by my dad as a brand new homeowner. He told me, nobody else is going to do it. You don't have a landlord anymore. Only person that's going to do it is you. So get off your butt and get it done. That's kind of how he generally talked to us anyway. Will they be long days? Yep. So what? Life is hard at times. You chose to become a homeowner. Days are long at times. Fatigue is fatigue. Tired is tired. But that should not make that a driving factor in doing what you signed up to do, and that is be a homeowner. Nobody twisted your arm behind your back. Nobody held a weapon to your head. You chose this. Now accept the responsibilities that go along with it. And not only go along with it for yourselves, but the neighborhood that you live in now. My first house, the one I said in Hayward, California, it was kind of the dog of the block. It really was. I lived to literally the Joneses next to me. And Mr. Jones's yard was the nines. There was not a blade of grass that was out of place. Everything was perfectly coiffed, manicured, the type of yard that I wanted mine to be. And in a way, even though at a young 24, I kind of emulated him. Even though one of the first conversations I had with him was, for God's sakes, I hope you're going to do something with that place. So, got on it, learned some early in life lessons. And once those lessons became habits and habits became lifestyle, fortunately, I've never lost that. And I hope I never do, because the properties that I have owned over the decades, they've always been prosperous to me, no matter what. Always had that, what's the word that they use in real estate? That uber curb appeal when a buyer pulled up to a home that I was selling. And that's very, very important, because if you let the place go to hell and too late you realize, I need to put a sign in the yard, I need to move on because I just can't keep up with this, you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars or more, depending on where you live, because of the condition. And your place has affected the rest of the immediate neighborhood. So be a responsible homeowner and get out there, even though you've decided to, okay, I'm going to put the sign out and get out of here and find something a little more my speed. You're going to have to put in a few weekends, put in some sweat equity, and get it back when you put that sign out there, because it's just irresponsible to not do that. There's a couple of houses not too far from where we live, and the small township near where we live is riddled with older homes, sprinkled with nice homes. And I see there's one particular set of houses where able-bodied 30 or 40 somethings live that have not taken care of their place, not maintained it, not done what they should be doing. And they live right next to an 80-year-old widow. And that 80-year-old widow is out there every day, every month, 365, taking care of what she can. And she does. The place looks amazing for a skinny little elderly lady. She does what needs to be done. So what's the contrast between that? You have a place that is maintained and kept up by someone who's twice the age of the people next to them, who have half-rotted cars in the yard and paint peeling off the thing and filthy, dirty windows and a yard that looks like crap. And then you have the elderly. Hey, I'll tell you what, it is a very, very hard decision for someone who is in their 20s or early 30s and shopping and looking for that first home. I really encourage you to pump the brakes when you come across something that is a lot of space and is going to take a lot of effort. Weigh that decision very heavily. Know what resources you have at your disposal. And when I say resources, I mean dollars, tools, family, friends, power equipment, etc. If that first home with that big yard is going to need a lot of work. Because if you don't have those resources at your disposal, you're going to be up against it. And there's nothing worse than doing something halfway and stopping and going, I just can't. I just can't do it anymore. Yes, you can. Yes, you should. And once you push through that locked door, it's going to be amazing at the confidence that you are going to glean from that. So, homeowner, soon to be homeowner, downsizer, divorced parent with 3 kids, you're still a homeowner. Get out there and get it done. If 12-hour days turn into 14, so be it. If you don't want to, then sell and become an apartment dweller again. Don't let it go to hell. It's a huge black eye to your self-respect, the usefulness of your property, the useful and the loss of equity, the respects of neighbors and the neighborhood, the bad habits that it develops, not to mention self-esteem, a poor example as a parent, and certainly a lack of enjoyment that you get from the property. Hey, one of the things that I always say is if you feel like you are drowning and in well over your head, with a landscape that has turned into a monster for you and seems insurmountable, you can always ask for some coaching and guidance. It's kind of what I live for here on the channel and the driving force for me every single week. So reach out. Let's see if we can solve it together, one way or another. That's what the website's for, youryardcoach.com. Goods and services, things to help the homeowner, both new, old, somewhere in between. Check it out. And as I always leave you every week, as always, to your landscape success. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.